Let's now welcome our panelist, Yvan Boudier. Xavier, Sarah, please. Gérard. And you see that I'm analog today. So, very welcome. I thought we would first like to hear maybe yourselves, if you could present yourselves briefly, and also giving your view on maybe why you think you're here and what your connection and views to sustainability in the area that you've been working in the area of music. That would be fantastic. So we'll start. Gérard, please.
Hi, I'm Gérard Assayag. I'm a senior researcher at IRCAM, Institut de Recherche et de Coordination Acoustique et Musique, the Institute for Research and Coordination between Acoustics and Music. This institute was created by Pierre Boulez, the famous composer and conductor in the mid-70s. And this research and creation and music production facility was kind of associated to the Centre Georges Pompidou, the big modern art museum in the middle of Paris. IRCAM is like the music research department of the Centre Pompidou. And I arrived at IRCAM in the 80s and created a new team there called Music Representation. In this team, we were creating software for musicians and especially for composers. So we brought this crazy idea of CAC, computer-assisted composition, that became quite proficient and that many people use today. So it's a bit like software for architects that helps architects to design spatial structures and be able to make them turn, see them in perspective, in 3D. So it's something that helps someone to express their ideas and simulate them and then change them. So it's a creativity tool, actually. So we designed this software called Open Music that many composers in contemporary music use. And a few years later, so getting closer to the present, I became pretty much interested into music interaction. That is, systems that would also try to be of some utility to the musician, but in a real-time, live setting. So systems that would be able to actually listen to musicians, understand in a way to what the musician is doing, create a representation, a cartography or a model in memory, and be able to play along with the musician and give the musician some musical and sonic feedback in a live, interactive, real-time settings. So this is more adapted to improvised music, of course, because in a way it's the biggest challenge because you don't know what's going to happen. Of course, for all these activities, so we designed a lot of softwares, and so we did really scientific research, creating models, then really implementing softwares, experimenting with musicians, and really using the softwares on stage. So all the softwares I'm talking about have been used on stage in hundreds of concerts all around the world, small concerts, big concerts, big venues, festivals. So it's interesting because it's both the cutting-edge scientific and music creation research, but also it's very practical. It's a system that many musicians enjoy playing with. So doing this, I understood a lot of things about artificial intelligence, but we'll talk about this later. But just a word to explain why I'm here and what is the relation with the main topics here, which was diversity, sustainability, equity, etc. At IRCAM, I have always fought in order that we receive some public money. IRCAM is a non-profit institution. It might be the biggest research center in the world for music, for sound and music science and creation. It receives public money, although we also get a lot of money from other actors. And I always felt that we have to give back all that we create and invent freely to the people. So I have always thought so that everything that we create, the software that we create, are all open source and freely available. So that's one first factor of equity and diversity, of course, because the idea is that any teenager in the middle of a desert in a country very far from here, providing they got an internet connection, they can download and use the software for free and get to the sources and understand what we are doing for them, what we are preparing, and then be able to change the software to tailor it to their own needs and culture. So that's a super important point for the diversity. And another thing is the relation with AI. I will just finish, because I don't want to keep the show too long, on this remark. We've been doing an AI for 60 years. Not many people know that because now the media talk a lot about AI as if it was a technology that was just popping out and emerging. But actually, the computer science activity from its beginning in the 40s have been really, really articulated around the idea of AI, because the idea of AI is simulating the human behavior and brain. And actually, this is what computer science does from the beginning. Even a simple accounting computation system try to emulate and simulate something that a human does. So the computer science is for simulating the human, whether you pronounce the word AI or not. And what has been called AI around the edge was things that the computer was not yet able to do. So we would call this AI, and there would be very big research programs to try to do that. And as soon as a certain limit was attained, and we were able to do something with the computer in the AI field, then this thing would not be called AI anymore, and it would become engineering. So there are many things that in the 60s people would call science fiction, AI. Now it's just engineering, and it's in your smartphone, and you don't even think about it. Of course, now with the deep learning technology, which is extremely powerful, and we are just taking the veil out of it, it will take quite some time before we just call this banal engineering. But it's good to keep this in mind, because AI is produced by human, and it is that it should be at the service of human, and in a way it has always been that way.
Thank you very much. We're looking forward to hearing much more of this also. Thank you. Javier?
Yes, hello. Well, thank you very much for inviting me. I am, Javier Serra. I head a research group far from being the size of IRCAM. But is still one of the biggest around in music technology in Barcelona, the Pompeu Fabra University. We are within an engineering department, also therefore not this music creativity focus that Gerard was talking about. So we do a lot of research mainly on the supporting technologies for music, both at the creative synthesis and lately for the last 20 years, supporting a lot all the streaming services type industries. And in fact, the main reason why I'm here is because we were funded by one of these Music Air projects that we wanted to do a debate on the challenges and opportunities of AI in the area of music. Because I think we are at an amazing moment in the development, and I don't think the current situation is one more step in the research evolution, and I think there is really an important sort of change that is happening. And for me, a very interesting aspect of that is that society is very much involved in that discussion. And we all see on the newspapers, on the media, opinions about that. And I think that's great. And typically, researchers like us have not been very much involved in these public discussions. And now there is no way we have to be. And so this is why we ask for this support from Music Air to have an open debate on involving the different stakeholders of the music sector on that. And that has been very interesting. And the goal of that was precisely to guide our future research. Okay? And to talk a little about AI and why I think it's an important moment now, first I want to talk about, for us, we had a similar moment a little bit more than 20 years ago with when the kind of the use of internet on developing streaming services or developing the possibility to stream music, and the Napster, which sort of revolutionized or the sector and made everyone worry that the music industry would disappear, and that we had to really rethink completely the music industry. Many of us thought so. Many of us were very hopeful that that moment, 20 years ago, was the opportunity to rethink completely the music sector, the music industry, and make it more fair, make it more driven by what the artist would be able to do. That didn't happen. Somehow, of course, the music sector, the music industry suffered a lot. Many disappeared, but somehow the key players managed to survive that and managed to continue business as usual, or the same type of ideas behind collecting rights, distributing rights, and the same players of rights holders, and they have continued to do that. I'm sure we would disagree on what is the health of that. For me now, we have another opportunity for people like us that would like to make changes, positive changes, and we have with the AI the possibility to really have a big revolution within the music industry, within the music sector, so that we can put in the hands of the real stakeholders of music something that they can control of, and that we can rethink and restructure the power that is within the music industry. But clearly, music industry is not up for the AI revolution. It's clear that the music industry learned from the Napster times, and now they're really, I hope, they're really thinking of what they should do, what they should react. But for me, it's a much bigger revolution than the one that we had, so that I don't know if current music industry will be able to handle that revolution. But clearly, we are at a moment that there is, of course, a lot of uncertain things, a lot of dangers that the music sector is not ready and the musicians are not ready for. And for me, if there is anything that we have to learn from the past, is that musicians, the music sector, the music stakeholders have to be part of the discussion, have to be part of the innovation. AI is not something that is out there that we're going to use or not use. AI is built by us. And in fact, if anything we can learn from the ChatGPT kind of thing, is that AI is not a black box that tell us some brilliant information. It's something we interact with, it's something that we make, it's something that has to be made by us, by our data, by our interaction, and without that, AI does not exist. So has to be the music sector that is in charge, takes control of these things. We cannot let the big IT companies, which we did in the previous revolution, take the leadership of all the music services and the music economy. There is no way that we can let all these big players, and has to be the musicians. And with AI, I think it's even more clear that that's what we should be doing. And I guess I leave it here because there's many other things. We will discuss it. Okay, thank you.
We will get back to several of the things. Thank you very much. Ivan.
Thanks, Xavier. So hello, everyone. Really glad to be here. Thanks, Alphonse, for the really inspiring introduction. I saw later some metal reference in your presentation. I liked it a lot. So me, I'm a French guy. I've been working at the intersection of music and technology for almost 20 years. I started in a music startup, and then I joined major labels for 11 years when I was in charge of several stuff, negotiating with the platform, with the DSPs, and then building all the tools for the artists and for the labels to find their way for audience management using data. And it brought me to become quite some kind of expert in music and technology for 6 years as an independent, working with also networks and the EU and Music Moves Europe, being involved in many projects and conversation about that dialogue or missed dialogue between music and technology. And I joined 2 years ago Utopia Music, based in Switzerland, founded by Swedish founders, which is basically the mission of Utopia is to translate data into value and intelligence. We use data to develop different range of services to monitor consumption and attribute music consumption to the right owners, so it can get to the right offer, composer, label at better speed and with more accuracy. So it goes down to what you described. Why I'm here, and I think a little bit step back, a topic I really like usually to bring to the table when we talk about innovation and tech and music is to question that idea of revolution and digital revolution. And you mentioned that term, revolution, and usually people, you see all those articles, especially nowadays with AI, all those articles debating the topic, you see a robot playing the piano, right? And it's always this opposition between the artist and the robot. And before that, when I was in a label, it was said, you're going to die soon, be prepared for that, you dinosaurs. It was the robot replacing the label, and it will be anyway. And this idea of disruption, I don't believe in disruption, or I'm pretty much against that idea that a technology is here to help another entity to replace something. It's more complex than that, also, to me, the digital revolution is not at all a technology revolution, it's a usage revolution. What I mean by that, it's a change, it's a shift, but it's an evolution of the way to create music, make music discovered, consume music, monetize music, and get the right stakeholders paid. So it's more usage, and in that usage you have two sides. You have the people, the audience, and you have the sector. And on the sector side, you can call that practices, and on the other side, usage. And it's down to me to something you discussed, and Alphonse, and we discussed I was involved in One Voice for Europe, for European Music Initiative. Maybe you've heard of that, some of you. It was a consultation started in France by Centre National de la Musique as a way to bring to EU level some recommendation about the way forward. And it was all the stakeholders involved in that consultation. I was the rapporteur for the digital group. And I had the chance to be with Alphonse in the international group of the same of the chapter in Sweden. And ultimately, at the end, we discussed about something really not digital or technology. It was down to knowledge sharing. All this revolution to be handled, and I think it goes exactly to the topic of sustainability as well, to capacity building. It's more how we adopt and how we use, and from the creative sector to the world, we use those tools so they can be tools and not a threat. Because this idea that there is a system or even AI, like this robot thing or Terminator 2 thing, that AI is built by humans, it's trained by humans, and the orders are given by humans. And creators are part of this human community, so I think we have a way forward to not take control back. It's not to get in a position, but to create a model, a path where all the stakeholders can be better empowered in their practices, But it's super hard because it's super complex. So again, it's down to education, to knowledge sharing. And we discussed that in our group. There is so many initiatives already done in that sense, but maybe one of the problems I see, and maybe a solution forward, the problem I see is the fragmentation of that knowledge, also silos across the industry. Hopefully we got the European Music Council doing a great job gathering and different players and producing a lot of collective knowledge and resources. Live DMAs, they are here, I guess. They also produce great reports. EXA is the same. Also some companies, some researchers, but it's all around the place pretty much. And if you're not part of that community, it's hard even to know that it does exist, and it's hard to navigate. And then, if it can maybe connect the dots, knowledge about the transformation of our ecosystem, how technology impacted, what is AI, how metadata works, it's accessible somewhere, but maybe we can use technology to make it better, with better accessibility, so we can, and it's part of then equity and equal chance to make everyone has a potential access to that knowledge. And I think this is something I strongly believe at Utopia also we can contribute by facilitating not only to produce a better infrastructure for music rights to be implemented, but also making that done with the stakeholders involved, with a lot of education from both sides. Everything you said over the past a day and a half I've been there, we will need more music startups to be in that room to learn from you. Because then they will not maybe talk anymore about disruption when they take the stage to pitch their product. Because they will understand that they work for you and with you. And this is super important, that collaborative innovation you just mentioned, Alphonse. And this is why I'm here, and in a nutshell.
That's great. Thank you very much. I'll give a concrete example, actually, of a collaboration that we do, the Swedish authors, songwriters, with Utopia. A very simple thing. When the big radio stations, they have the means to monitor. They can do that. But the small ones don't. And the small ones, they are the ones with the more diverse repertoire. So when we used Utopia to see how that would work in scanning that, we found not only musical works that no one knew was played, but also authors, composers, songwriters that were not listed. So we actually found the invisible music and invisible creators. So that's a good example of finding that diversity through technology also. But let me ask you, when you describe the music industry or music business, I don't think that we don't disagree very much on that. I don't think we can talk about an industry or business that has been very sustainable before. So I think it has more to do with, so how can we change that now? But when you describe it as if it's the same usual suspects, I don't think that the big players in the music industry feel the same, because music has become something of value also for those who know nothing about music. They're investing in music rights, our rights. These are companies that are not into it because they love music. So isn't this where we actually should build our alliances and working with creators, performers? When you say that you do that in project-wise, but do you do that in your daily job? Are there rooms for improvement in that kind of collaboration?
I don't know if I understand completely, but of course our group, and again, different from maybe IRCAM that is funded publicly, most of our work is funded through companies. With project with companies and with the EU, so we would like to work on certain things, but we cannot because we don't have the funding. And this is in fact related to the fact that the music sector is a sector in which has not been much investment on research. So from historical reasons, all the labels, all the publishers, the concept of research does not exist on there. So therefore, it's very rare that we can collaborate with the real stakeholders that have the musical knowledge. And typically, yes, there is a number of industries that have emerged that did not exist before, but that they come from other backgrounds, come from IT, and those are the ones that need our musical expertise, and then we do things. But yeah, typically the music sector is not involved in the innovation that we use every day in our products, and
So
that's a big problem.
room for improvement, and I know that we have the networks here, so
Yes.
we'll talk more about that. But Gerard, I know that at IRCAM you have a long history of not only working with, many of those working at IRCAM has also been contemporary composers and been working, with the different developments. But do you see that as also including the whole musical sphere, popular music? Has that changed any? How's the collaboration in that sense with IRCAM and the work that you're doing now?
Yeah, it's interesting to recall once again that IRCAM is publicly funded, although we have a lot of collaboration with the industry and the big cultural and research institution in Europe and in the world. But it's important to recall this point because I think that this particular idea of non-profit institution has not been discussed so much till now in this conference, because we heard a lot about industrial actors, copyright holders, actors, big tech, etc. But actually, these large public institutions have a crucial role in the innovation and the creation of new technologies that eventually make it to the market. So they are a super important actor in the whole landscape. But the good thing with this institution is that, okay, not only do they create new technologies that eventually make it to the industry, but they are also able, because they are reasoning first and foremost in a non-profit setting, they are pretty much concerned at the outset by this idea of equity, diversity, and sustainability. So I will come to the precise answer to your question, but it's good to have the big picture about this. To give an example, for instance, at Stanford, which was also a public facility, my friend John Chowning invented the FM synthesis long ago, the frequency modulation synthesis, and it was published, so it was freely available scientific knowledge. But then Yamaha got interested into it, and then they fabricated the famous DX7 synthesizer, who became absolutely popular all around the world and absolutely ubiquitous. And of course, afterward, they probably had very interesting deals with the university, so everybody was, happy. But it's interesting to know that in the first place, it was purely, in French we say désintéressé research, that is non-profit oriented research. And at IRCAM, we invented the software Max, which is distributed by an American company, Cycling, Max MSP, who is also a software that is used all around the world for handling on-stage interactions, whether it be for sound, for events, or for lights, or whatever. So this technology eventually make it to the market. So yes, in a way, at IRCAM we had a very original scheme, which was direct collaboration between cutting-edge creators, what you call contemporary music. Contemporary music, it's the way we call it in French. It's not absolutely equivalent in English. They call it sometimes new music or new classical music, whatever. It's just the continuation of classical music, that is music with orchestral settings, acoustic instruments, ensembles, but including technology. And including also a way of creating innovative forms in music. So not repeating things that already exist, like writing a new symphony that has never been played, but which more or less looks like what was existing in the 19th century, but creating absolutely unheard forms. So this is what we call in France contemporary music. So of course this concern kind of a small band, a small layer. But because the technological innovation that has been developed in this kind of institution eventually make it to the industry and the market, and eventually begins spreading and concerning a lot of people, it's going to be used by anybody, so in every genre and in every kind of music. So that's one first consequence, which is just the idea that by creating innovative technology and making them easily and widely available, it will eventually be used by every people, not regarding any limitation of genre or culture background. But that's one thing. The other thing is that this institution that was kind of really focused at its beginning on contemporary and new music experiments, sometimes it's also called experimental music, has opened a lot, also culturally and aesthetically, and I think it's also linked to the technological issues, and also the fact that we've been exploring computation and artificial intelligence for many years. Because when you come up with a good technological idea, whether it be for handling sound and acoustics, or, as in my case, for handling content, musical content, that is generative systems. The word generative is very popular now with AI. The interesting thing is that in the system in general, you don't have kind of an aesthetical canon or an aesthetical model. You can, but you can also avoid that and focus on general and universal musical features and structures. And in that case, it's easy to then create a diversity of production and generative production in different music genres. So when we created this first system, we immediately talked with people from the jazz scene, and people from the pop and rock scene, and people from the free improvisation scene, because this exists as well, and people of traditional music as well. And for instance, the AI system that we have developed for improvising with human, we can use them in all of these settings. So now IRCAM has also kind of opened its mind to all the cultures and genre of music.
And I have to say, some of the things that you do, they're amazing. So maybe for the next forum, you'll be able to showcase some of them because they're remarkable. I have a question for you, Ivan. Since we have also a lot of representativity from the educational system here and educational institutions, and I don't really like when we always put ourselves in silos. We have a creator, we have a researcher, we have, it's important that we can be a bit of both and that we are prepared going into a professional life. What kind of advice would you give from the sustainability aspect also for the educational area? What can we do to create better sustainability in the digital?
Yeah, I think it goes down to first put sustainability in everything we do, meaning and it's about getting the silos away. When I'm doing some lectures also with students, for them it's pretty natural that those barriers between technology, music, public funding, art, private, it's pretty vague or gone. But it has to come also to the people who organize those educations that it is the case. So more an ecosystemic view of things. We need to change maybe our cheap us, because when you talk to the youngest, it's not exactly there. I was raising my hand because I wanted to talk about ecosystem, and it goes exactly in that direction. There is Shane in the room for some diplomacy here. I truly believe it has to be multidisciplinary, it has to be cross-sectorial, and it has to be transversal. So I think to me the answer is to open up and to invite a startup to a class dedicated to rights management, and if it is an engineer school, to invite an artist to come and explain what they do and how they relate to the software they use. So opens the door for externalities and transferable knowledge. I think this is really important, and I guess these diverse views of the world, because our world is complex by design, and it can be potentially a good news because we have the tools, AI is one of them, to organize information. So that first. And the second thing I would say is to make sure that we put in place, so it's a lot of players involved, stakeholders, the path for the one who have new ideas and sustainable ideas to get to the market or to get their ideas into practice. And I think that's one of the role of EU and the local governments to do grants, but not only that, not only money, infrastructure and networks to enable projects to have a chance to be experimented. So room for experimentation, I think, is another one, because we need that those models we discuss, sustainable, they have a chance to scale and to become the norm. Otherwise, what is the point? I think it's like innovation in a box somewhere. I was tired, I think it has changed a little bit, but when you go to a music conference, not here, you have the sustainability track somewhere, and you have the digital track on another side, and all the rest is about music and people talking to each other about the same thing. It has to be everywhere, those topics. In every topic we discuss, sustainability needs to be central, and it can be central. And then again, also enable experimentation by involving more diverse also group of people. I guess just here in the room, we are here today, but we need to keep that diversity when we go back to our daily life. And I think it's part of the process. Because in the education, they don't ask themselves the question, but when they need to decide which path of their career they need to choose, then they enter the silo. And that's where the problem begin, I think. Is it clear what I've said?
Yeah, and we are getting back to a bit of what we actually had as recommendations from the One Voice. That is, you do not just educate yourself and then you are ready for the rest of your life to work. It's about upgrading, upscaling your knowledge all the time. So a continuous education also within.
And by learning from each other.
Yes.
Which is really important. There's that knowledge sharing thing. Yeah. Hard to organize, but EMC did a good job so far.
Yeah, I told him to say that. So, not ending up in the silos and just seeing things from our own perspective, anyone who would like to answer, I think that we should also try to at least think about what does the listener, or as some call them, consumers, what do you think that their perception of a sustainable digital musical sphere is, or musical arena? Is it different from what we are talking about here? Anyone?
Well, for me, the concept of sustainability in the digital, which again, it's a very difficult to include sustainability in our type of work and research, is more of empowering all the stakeholders into their interaction with music, no? And it's clear that the digital world allows to have a much bigger interaction on everything you do, and you can have more interaction at the listener's point of view, at the creative point of view, at the performers, and somehow the current systems are not taking full advantage of that. And that's a commercial thing, and clearly the streaming services are supporting a very passive type of listening. They don't have to, but I guess that's what is easier, and that's what the business model is. But so we always get confused between what technologies can do, what AI can do, and what current systems offer. No, so we always believe that a recommender system is what Spotify gives us, and AI is what ChatGPT just released a couple of months ago. That's not the case. Those are very particular implementations with very particular business goals that these companies develop. One of the greatest things in AI that has happened until now is that has been a very open research field. I mean, it's one of these research fields which, amazingly enough, has been, even the companies have done everything open, everything public, with a lot of collaboration between industry and academia. And that's part of the reason why it has been so successful. On top of the fact that we have never before had hundreds of thousands, to not say millions of researchers working on the same topics. This has never happened before. It used to be music technology was URCAM and a few other centers around responsible for the development of all the new technologies for music technology. That's not anymore the case. We can take advantage of all these methodologies that exist, that other people from language, from image are doing, and this is amazing, the potential that this has. And one of the big potentials is really empowering people and interacting with these systems and being able to bring your own voice, your own data, your own things. But this depends on us on pushing for that. At the policy level, at the user level, we don't push for Spotify to offer more control over the interaction we have. We don't push for many systems to allow us to be more interactive. We are happy with systems that are completely just say a couple of words and it will give you a whole bunch of half an hour of music. That depends on us on taking advantage of all this technology and making it really empowering for all of us.
Gerard first, and then Ivan.
Yeah, I totally agree, Xavier. But there is a problem, though. You remember that OpenAI, in the first place, was a company that was created in order to produce software that would be freely available and open source, but they decided to close it and to privatize it. Other big tech actors, like Google, still continue to create new research and technology.
Not for long.
But they are thinking, but they have seen the OpenAI experience, and as now they foster that it's going to create huge value. Now they are thinking to close this software and stop making it available as open source. This is a super important issue for the question of equity and diversity, because an important thing with AI, if we do not want to be dominated by the technology and by AI, is that we have access to the models. That we are able to look at the models, train them ourselves, and understand by ourselves what they are doing and how they handle data. And if the source code is totally closed and privatized, then we cannot do that. So I am very amazed that when we see all the states and governments thinking about regulation for AI, they think about rightly. They think about finding regulation in order to stamp the AI-produced images, so we know that they are fakes. They are looking at regulation that will kind of prevent the political use of AI. But I'm amazed that one of the major topics is not thinking about making the production of open source obligatory for the industry, because this would be a way for the people to actually regulate and understand and master AI by themselves. And I think this is extremely important.
That's a very interesting point. Thank you very much.
To go back to the question of the perception of the audience and I think it's really, really interesting because maybe we can see this way around, the role of music to change consciousness, awareness, and attitudes towards those topics. And in two ways. If you look at the festivals, many artists now are becoming a voice to talk about sustainability, to talk about our responsibility, collective responsibility as a society. And when you think about it, the live sector, for instance, the live performance sector, they are pretty fragile, especially after the COVID period, and they're still the ones standing up to show, maybe to become role model in many ways, how to reduce the carbon impact, how to make everything they can to be sustainable when they are still struggling to get the audience back and to deal with secondary market. There's a lot of challenges, and still they're addressing that one. And I think this is really interesting that music can be a laboratory and a platform to talk about those topics as well. And in another more marketing dimension of the same question, it's interesting to see. So if you look at the streaming world, like streaming music to the people, it's basically every research shows that most of the audience is passive in this way to listen. And there is not so much, let's say, the choice for a platform yet is not made because of their features regarding sustainability. But since we have competition, and competition is part also of EU values in parallel of sustaining art and creative and diversity, it's quite of a good thing because you see lately, like Deezer was the first, so Deezer is a French Spotify, and there was a first in line 4 years ago to experiment the user-centric model to compensate music, and you mentioned that, and then Tidal came in the game, and then SoundCloud to say, are they true to that promise or not? We don't know, but at the end of the day, they do it because they want to be good, and they want to keep their audience in. And now it becomes the same with maybe sustainability and so on and so forth. So maybe that as a lever can be interesting. The audience perception, I'm sure that the younger generations are more and more asking for that, and they will request that as a requisite. Like, guys, please take care of everything you want, but I want my platform to be fair for the artists, to be sustainable. But this is not the case yet. But I think it goes in the right direction right now, for many through competition, to be honest.
I absolutely agree, and at the next forum we'll tell you more about something called the Fair Music Platform that the International Music Council is working on as well. So I think we should open up for questions. And please, when you get the microphone, tell us who you are, and also if you direct the question to one of the panelists. We have a question. Do we have a mic? There. Over there.
Hi, I'm Alessandra from Brazil. It's a short question. Are you musicians? Are you three?
Professionally, no. But
No? But I would like to hear about your personal experience as musicians, because I think it was kind of maybe a theoretical panel about what is it, but how do you feel as musicians interacting with AI?
You know, technology has been there with musicians forever, and with the software and with the sampling, and depend on what kind of instruments you play, what kind of music you are into. But even in classical music, there have been a lot of development for musicians and for orchestra, for conductors to just go to facilitate their life. And I think it starts with the musician adopting. So if you take the creation, production, promotion, distribution, the different steps, and live production of the life cycle of a music project, technology or digital, whatever you call it, has entered the room in many ways, and most of the time it has been adopted by our creators first. But there are many things that came on the consortium side that were not in their advantage, like when it came to the streaming and distribution. But so the perception of musician, I think it's both things. It's a big paradox, and it's a really interesting question, because usually in those every panel we can have about music and technology and innovation, everyone is talking about the artist, but you never have an artist on stage, apart from Alphonse here. What I'm trying to say is that it's a big paradox, because digital opens up an incredible range of opportunities. So creation has never been as easy as before. Collaboration as well. You can co-create a song with someone in Korea right now, release it online, but at the same time, you have 120,000 songs being uploaded every day on platforms, so being discovered, emerge from the crowd becomes incredibly difficult, and being compensated fairly becomes also a challenge. So it's a balance, and this is why we need infrastructure, we need collective answer to those questions, but that's a really important question.
Thank you, but very briefly, if I can just answer from a...
It was rather a personal question. How do you feel?
I feel.
As musicians, and not, you know...
But I can tell you from...
It's quite concrete, no?
Yeah.
I feel happy.
Is it disgusting? How do you feel by it?
You want adjectives? I feel
Okay.
Since we don't have Zara here, and I will take the role also because I am a musician and a composer, I would say that all of this technology I love as tools, when there are tools to create and play, but the technology so far has not empowered individual creators and performers when it comes to the ecosystem of getting remuneration, being visible. So as a tool, in the same way that I buy everything for a kitchen that goes electronically, that's fantastic. But now, hopefully, we have technology that will be able to be more decentralized and not depending on just the few platforms or big companies. That is my feeling as a musician and composer.
My feeling, I don't like it at all. I am a classically trained musician, but for me, sincerely, the AI, which is now known, is just the generative part. I use, and I am very enthusiastic about many other usages of AI, of scanning a score and getting the music XML, of accompanying me when I play, of being able to educate me in music education. That's what we work. I love those. The creative part, which is the one that is being talked about, I hate it.
I am engaged as a musician in my research, and so the AI software that we create for interacting with musicians, they need control. They need to be controlled by a human on stage to take decision, to take musical decision. So I'm often on stage with a computer, interacting with live musicians playing on acoustical instruments. And it's interesting because my instrument is a bit weird. It's a machine. It's not very expressive for the audience, but it's in improvisation music. And I think that improvisation has something to do with trance, you know, shamanic trance and all that stuff. That is, all great improvisers, and we could see this yesterday as well in the concert. At the moment of the improvisation, they kind of take off. You know, they kind of take off and get into what is called in psychology a flow. They are in a flow, playing, you know, at the best of their cognitive, musical means and skills. And although I have just a poor synthesizer with a mouse, it happens to me that I get into the stage, and then there is really kind of a fusion with the musician that is super nice.
Thank you. And as you see, these are not just experts, they have a lot of feelings as well. So we have a question in the back over there, and then we have Ian over there. Well, you are in the back actually there. So. Yes. Mimi.
Thank you very much. Hello, my name's Mimi. I'm an EMC fellow, and I'm a cellist, I'm a composer. Right now, I'm actually working on my own music in virtual reality, so I'm exploring this intersection myself. But on the topic of artificial intelligence, as a creator, for me, I think it's really important that we have regulation so that we can opt out of our music being fed into the algorithms so that then they can, you know, recreate my sound or Drake's sound or Xenakis or whoever. So I think that's my kind of major thing at the moment, is just thinking regulation so that we can opt out if we want to, but then also using it to monetize and to collect royalties. So I wonder perhaps if this is something that us as an, you know, kind of umbrella organization could consider.
Actually, this is also something that we are working on with the European Composer and Songwriter Alliance. And this, what you say, is extremely important. And it's basically not doing something new for AI, but maintaining our rights, not just the economical right, but the moral rights and your right to actually not be played in a certain circumstances as well. So there we are totally on board. But it has to be done, of course, in a way that that doesn't stop processes, but making it possible to maintain a balance with rights and usage. I think that...
Go ahead.
Well, for me, this has to be a social discussion and a political discussion, and that society has to decide on. So as a researcher, I want to make the point that an AI is not, it doesn't imply that will reproduce your work if it has been in the database. No, I mean, it's like all of us, we listen to music and that doesn't prevent us from making music and doesn't make us infringing any copyright law. So the AI, in principle, could be treated in the same way, like a brain that listens to everything they have, and then it has to be regulated how it's explained and that you can trace back what it does, etc. The other very differently, and this again for me is a social, whether this any individual person or any how to trace back or if there is royalties back from it. For me, it would be sad that AI systems cannot take advantage of our collective history of music. If we don't do that, AI will not advance and culture will not advance. And putting doors, I don't think is the right way. We have to find other ways.
This is when it's getting interesting.
Yeah. And it's a really interesting question, and the way you phrase it, especially choice, this choice word. I think everything we discussed to me goes down to this, and sustainability is about capacity building, but not only in the political way, but making sure that we have the regulation, but also the infrastructure here and the education before, to make sure that everyone is in a position to make a choice. The fan, the choice of music they want to listen to, and not potentially to be pushed the same music all the time. You as an artist to have a choice to opt in or opt out the AI world. But even if you have the regulation, then we will need the tools and the infrastructure to make it work. Deezer, again, the French DSP, they announced 3 days ago that they just launched a tool that will scan their whole catalog they receive, and they have now the capacity to tell pretty much 99% that it is a copy or it has similarities with all existing music. So technology is also good for auditing stuff, not only to produce stuff. So yeah, infrastructure, education, regulation, we can go somewhere with that. And yeah, it's great to ask a question.
Thank you. We're reaching the limit. You'll have to tell us when you throw us out. But we have a question there from Ian, straight ahead here.
Hi, thanks, Alphonse. Ian Smith. Apparently I was president of the EMC at one point, which was a great honor, and now allegedly retired. My question is about broadcasting specifically, because the EBU is a member of IMC and EMC, and a very important member. We have just had the Eurovision show, and of course Alphonse will be delighted they're coming to Sweden next year. But my point is that the terrestrial broadcaster, the BBC, the RTE in Ireland, RAI in Italy, etc., are state-funded by the taxpayer. Very few have a commercial income. RTE in Ireland is an exception. But in my experience, many of the terrestrial broadcasters, the BBC being one of the worst offenders, will commission new music, but then try to take a proportion of the copyright of that music. So they are making it possible to broadcast the music on a major platform. The BBC pay PRS millions of pounds every year to pay royalties to those artists predominantly in the top 40 of the charts. So how can we ensure that the terrestrial state broadcaster plays fair by the creators? Because that's not always the case.
Can I also one thing that is, I would say that having been lobbying quite a lot in Sweden towards our public broadcaster, when it comes to a company buying out full rights and the public broadcaster using them, Epidemic Sound, the public broadcasters say that it's about alternatives, it's about freedom of choice. So we have to also include those composers who do not get credit or so. But with AI, I would say that it's much easier to lobby that they do not use just AI-generated music in the same way, because that is not part of their promotion of a diverse music and to be a support for the next generation. So I would say that it would be easier, at least in lobbying, towards that than what we have now. But
this brings us to the question of generative models. Generative models are becoming pervasive, and of course they have been exemplified by ChatGPT. And it's only a small matter of time because before we have the same level of production in music. Music is a bit late because there hasn't been in music the massively important investment that there have been in the visual domain or in the language domain, because sound is always behind vision. But it's a matter of 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, because before we have pervasive generation of music everywhere. So we have to understand, and this reconnect to the previous question, that many people do the mistake of thinking that the generative models, as ChatGPT, quote things, that they just recombine things that they take here and there and recombine them, and so so that if you look closely to what they generate, you will kind of find a quotation of maybe pieces that you have done yourself. This is not the case. This is not how deep learning works. In ChatGPT, there are around 175 billion parameters, you know, that are trained over kind of the whole human culture that they can find on the internet, and they are not taking, you know, snippets of things that they put into a sequence. They really create kind of a new material, original material. But on the other hand, and this is paradoxal, this material is quite banal. Because of course, because they're kind of averaging over the whole human culture, they produce kind of banal things. Now the problem is that 90% of things that are being traded in the culture are banal. Not everything is super, you know, creative, genial, unique, singular. So which means that maybe for 90% of producers, it's going to be a big problem, and that's of course a huge human and social problem. But of course, this doesn't replace the singularity of a human creator, and this will continue to exist. So this is why, as I said, I have been doing artificial intelligence for a long time, way before people talk about deep learning and generative model, but we were always sort of in generative model. But from the outset, we decided that we would use AI only in interactive settings. That is, settings where there would be lively interaction between human and AI, which is very, very different from the general generative scheme where you press a button, you generate something, and then you take it, whether it be a text, a music, and then maybe you try to sell it. So, of course, this is very particular because we're interested in live music, but maybe it could become an ethical direction that could be enforced also by the regulation. Because a few years ago, people in the science research, in music, science of music research, began to talk about computational creativity or artificial creativity, because the algorithm began to kind of be interesting, produce things that were surprising, rich, which are qualifiers that we give to creativity. And I was thinking, no, something that is a machine, because it is not a subject in the psychological, ontological, philosophical level, can hardly be qualified as a creative entity. But it can create effects of creativity and kind of emulate the surface of things and of creativity. And then we decided to rather push the concept of co-creativity. That is, situation where you have agents interacting, so you can have humans, you can have machines, only machines or only humans, and where the creative content, forms, etc., kind of emerge from the interaction, and you have emergence of new, interesting, rich music, forms, etc., which of course happen easily in improvisation. For compositions, it's a bit different. In that case, for us, it was quite okay to use artificial intelligence intelligence, because in this case, AI was not more important than human, and on the contrary, it was kind of really stimulating the human creativity. And it connects to a concept coming from the complex systems, the study of complex systems, which is called emergence. That is, you have very complex and rich phenomenon. It is the case, for instance, in living organisms that emerge, and you observe them, and it's very complicated, and you don't know how to explain them and to model them, etc. Then you divide them into their component, and you have sub-actors that are producing things. And then when you look at the actors individually, you don't understand how, by just collecting and adding all this behavior, you get the overall behavior. And this happens in situations where you put complex entities such as humans on one hand and algorithms on the other hand, and it can create super interesting things. Okay, so this is my stuff, my research, but maybe in the regulation, there could be the idea, apart from open source that I already talked about, that there shouldn't be any business done upon AI production if there are not human involved in an interactive setting.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And I think that one thing is trying to have obstacles for AI-generated music, but we should be aware of the fact that it's probably the other way around, where you have the few big streaming services deciding over the playlist, and of course we'll have the AI copyright-free music, the ones that we actually will easily reach because of money, not because of quality. Unfortunately, we need to stop now. I know you have a lot of questions. I'm very sorry. But we are all invited back next year. Maybe. Thank you so much. A big round of applause to our panelists. Thank you. Thank you very much.